The Vidian mercenaries stood frozen in terror, their weapons shaking, as the human special ops dropships descended from the sky. These alien soldiers, known for their ruthless conquests, had never faced an enemy that struck such primal fear into their hearts, until now. The year was 2145. Vidian raiders, led by the cruel commander Xanth, had been pillaging Earth's defenseless colonies at the edges of explored space. The Vidians saw humans as weak, easy prey, but they had never tangled with the deadliest of humanity's warriors. Enter Brian Foster, grizzled veteran and leader of an elite special forces unit. His mission: travel to the Vidian homeworld of Zephyrus and put an end to their attacks by any means necessary. Intel reports came in as Foster's dropship entered atmosphere. The Vidians were massing a force 10 times larger than anticipated near the human landing zone. Millions of colonists on nearby worlds were at the aliens' mercy if Foster's team failed to break through their lines. The dropship touched down on Zephyrus's barren surface. Foster and his battle-hardened men readied their weapons, prepared to face the Vidian horde head-on no matter the odds. In the distance, a sea of alien warriors assembled, their high-tech armor glinting under the harsh sun. Hundreds of menacing war machines accompanied the Vidian troops, anti-grav tanks, artillery platforms, all poised to annihilate the human interlopers. Foster's tactical lens flashed red with an urgent transmission from HQ. The Vidians had secretly placed a doomsday device in the heart of a human colony on planet Asteria. Unless his team could secure it within 24 hours, the Vidians would detonate it, wiping out 5 million men, women, and children in a heartbeat. Time was running out. The enemy outnumbered them 10-1. Foster had a vital choice to make: face the Vidians in open battle to stop their advance, or split his team to secure the doomsday device before it erased millions of innocent lives. The fate of entire worlds hung in the balance as the human soldiers steeled themselves for the fight of their lives against the alien aggressors. Foster sharpened his eyes as he made the gut-wrenching decision. He turned to Hawkins, his second-in-command, and locked eyes with him. "Jake, you're taking a covert ops team to Asteria. Find that doomsday device and neutralize it at all costs. The lives of millions depend on you." Hawkins nodded, his face etched with willpower. "We won't let you down, sir." He quickly assembled his squad of elite operatives and boarded a stealth dropship, vanishing into the sky as they raced towards Asteria. Foster rallied his remaining troops, positioning them in a defensive formation across the barren landscape of Zephyrus. They dug in, fortifying their positions with portable barricades and setting up heavy weapons emplacements. The air crackled with tension as they awaited the Vidian onslaught. Suddenly, a colossal holographic projection of Xanth materialized before the human lines, his scarred visage looming over the battlefield like a malevolent god. "Surrender now, humans!" he bellowed, his voice dripping with disdain. "You are hopelessly outnumbered and outgunned. Your pathetic colony worlds will soon fall before the might of the Vidian Empire." Foster stepped forward, his rifle held high. He stared defiantly up at Xanth's hologram. "I'll give you 2 options, Xanth," he shouted, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Retreat now, and face the consequences of your actions through diplomatic channels, or stay and fight, and suffer devastating losses when we unleash our full military might." As if on cue, the sky above them erupted with the roar of engines. Human reinforcements poured from the heavens, heavily armed mech warriors descending in drop pods, their massive frames dripping with weaponry. A fleet of advanced Predator fighter craft screamed overhead, their sleek forms cutting through the air like avenging angels. Xanth's hologram flickered, a look of shock and disbelief etched across his features. On the ground, Zorg and Krix, his subordinate captains, urged him to press the attack. "We can still crush them, Commander," Krix insisted, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. But many of the Vidian soldiers wavered, their persistence crumbling at the sight of the human war machines. Foster saw his chance and seized it. "Even now, my team is en route to disarm your doomsday device on Asteria," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "This is your last chance, Xanth. Stand down, or we will hunt you to the last man." Tense moments crawled by, the air thick with anticipation. Then Xanth's hologram flickered again, and a look of defeat shadowed his face. He had received word that Hawkins' team had successfully neutralized the Doomsday device. His plan lay in ruins. With a snarl of rage, Xanth gave the order to retreat. The Vidian army, demoralized and broken, began to withdraw from the battlefield, their once proud formations dissolving into chaos. Foster allowed himself a moment of relief, but he knew the battle was just beginning. As his soldiers regrouped and tended to their wounded, he was already planning the next phase of the campaign. Xanth would be brought to justice, and the human colonies would know lasting peace. Foster would make sure of it. Foster's comms crackled to life as Hawkins's voice cut through the static. "Sir, we've neutralized the Doomsday device on Asteria, but we've got a situation." Foster's stomach dropped. "What is it, Hawkins?" "The Vidians have taken Governor Chen and his staff hostage in the capital's government complex. Xanth is making demands." "Patch him through," Foster ordered, his jaw clenching. Xanth's gravelly voice filled the channel. "Humans, hear me. Withdraw your forces from Zephyrus, and let us keep what we've rightfully conquered. Refuse, and your precious governor dies." Foster cut the transmission. "Like hell," he muttered. He assembled his best operators, Deacon, Riggs, and Garrett. "We're going in. Prototype active camo, full stealth." The team slipped into the sprawling government complex, their outlines shimmering and blending with the surroundings. They moved through corridors, past oblivious Vidian guards. Suddenly, a patrol rounded the corner. Garrett reacted instantly, his fist connecting with the lead Vidian's throat. Riggs took down another with a precise knife throw. Alarms blared. Xanth's elite Praetorian guard swarmed in. "Shit!" Deacon muttered, switching to his sidearm for close quarters. The humans fought tooth and nail. Deacon's pistol barked, downing Vidians with headshots. Riggs tossed a charge, the explosion creating chaos. Garrett was a whirlwind, his combat knife flashing. They fought their way to the hostage room. Riggs planted breaching charges. "Fire in the hole!" The door exploded inward. The team surged through, neutralizing the guards in seconds. But their victory was short-lived. Governor Chen and his staff wore blinking collars. "Explosive collars," Garrett growled. Foster's voice came through their comms. "I'm coming in. Xanth must have the detonator. Hold position." Minutes later, Foster confronted Xanth in a nearby chamber. "Let's settle this," Foster challenged. "You and me. No weapons." Xanth's eyes gleamed. "I accept, human." They clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Foster took a punishing blow to the ribs, but countered with a devastating knee strike. Meanwhile, Riggs worked feverishly to hack the Vidian systems. "Almost got it," he muttered. Foster and Xanth traded blows, neither giving ground. Foster felt his strength ebbing, but he saw Riggs flash a thumbs-up through the doorway. With renewed vigor, Foster unleashed a flurry of strikes. Xanth stumbled, and Foster seized the advantage, locking the Vidian commander in a chokehold. "It's over," Foster panted. With Xanth subdued and the hostages freed, human forces secured the capital. Reports streamed in of Vidian units fleeing, their morale shattered. Foster stood on a balcony overlooking the city, his team at his side. "We've got them on the run," he said. "Time to finish this." With the hostages secure, Foster wasted no time. "Hawkins, take point. We hit their command centers and supply depots, hard and fast." Hawkins nodded, his team already moving out. They slipped through the shadows of Zephyrus's alien landscape, their active camo shimmering as they approached the first Vidian outpost. "3 guards on the perimeter," Hawkins whispered. "Take them quiet." His team moved like ghosts. In seconds, the guards dropped without a sound. They breached the command center, neutralizing the shocked Vidian officers inside before they could even reach for their weapons. As Hawkins's squad wreaked havoc across Vidian strongholds, Foster received word that Sergeant Deacon and his sniper team were in position behind enemy lines. Deacon's voice crackled over the comm. "Target acquired. Vidian Colonel Krastok. Permission to engage?" "Granted," Foster replied. The crack of Deacon's rifle echoed across the battlefield. Krastok fell, and chaos erupted among the Vidian ranks. But as Foster watched the Vidians crumble, his tactical display lit up with an urgent transmission. Admiral Jackson's face appeared, grim and tense. "Foster, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors have picked up a massive Vidian fleet headed our way, battle arcs included." Foster's blood ran cold. He'd seen footage of battle arcs in action, entire planets reduced to ash. "How long?" he asked. 6 hours, maybe less, Jackson replied. Foster's mind raced. They were winning on the ground, but if that fleet arrived? "Hawkins," he barked into his comm. "New objective. Find and disable their planetary defense grid. We need to give the fleet a clear shot at that armada." "Roger that," Hawkins replied, "and we're on it." Foster turned to his remaining troops. "Listen up. We're assaulting their command bunker. This ends now." As Hawkins' team approached the defense grid facility, they encountered a wall of Vidian shock troops. Plasma fire lit up the night, forcing the humans to take cover. "Riggs!" Hawkins shouted. "We need a way in!" Riggs grinned, pulling out a string of demo charges. "One entrance coming right up." The explosion rocked the facility, creating a breach in the Vidian defenses. Hawkins' team surged forward, fighting their way to the control room. Meanwhile, Foster led the charge into the Vidian command bunker. Riggs and Garrett took point, breaching charges blasting through heavy doors as suppressive fire kept the defenders pinned. They fought their way deeper, the confined spaces of the bunker turning the battle into a brutal close-quarters slugfest. Foster's rifle barked, downing Vidian after Vidian as they pushed towards the command center. Finally, they reached the inner sanctum. Captain Zorg and the remaining Vidian leaders stood their ground, weapons trained on the humans. "Surrender," Foster demanded. "It's over." Zorg snarled, his hand inching towards the control panel. "If we die, you die with us." But before he could activate the self-destruct, a shot rang out. Zorg stumbled, a smoking hole in his chest. Captain Crix lowered his weapon, turning to Foster. "Perhaps," Crix said, "we can discuss terms of surrender?" Foster's comm crackled. Hawkins' voice came through, breathless but triumphant. "Defense grid is down, sir. Fleet has a clear shot at the incoming armada." As if on cue, the bunker shook with the force of orbital bombardment. The Vidian reinforcements were being torn apart in the skies above. Foster allowed himself a small smile. "I think," he said to Crix, "that would be a very good idea." Foster stood on the command deck, his eyes scanning the holographic display of Zephyrus. The last pockets of Vidian resistance blinked out one by one as reports of surrenders flooded in. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before turning to Lieutenant Hawkins. "We've got a situation," Foster said, his voice tight. "Intel reports a large group of Vidian mercenaries trying to flee the planet. They've seen what we can do, and they're running scared." Hawkins nodded, his face set with focus. "What are our orders, sir?" "Intercept and neutralize. We can't let them escape and potentially regroup elsewhere." Within minutes, Hawkins assembled his rapid response team. They geared up in silence, each member checking and double-checking their advanced stealth suits. The air crackled with tension as they boarded their dropship. As they lifted off, Foster's voice came through the comms. "Predator Squadron is on standby for air support. Good hunting, Lieutenant." The harsh desert landscape of Zephyrus stretched out below them, a sea of rust-colored sand and jagged rock formations. Hawkins' team tracked the mercenary convoy through a combination of satellite imagery and heat signatures. "I've got eyes on the target," Corporal Chen reported from her position at the dropship's sensor array. "They're moving fast, heading for the equatorial spaceport." Hawkins leaned over her shoulder, studying the convoy's movement patterns. An idea formed in his mind. "Riggs, can you hack their nav systems?" The tech specialist grinned. "Give me 2 minutes." True to his word, Riggs' fingers flew over his datapad. In less than 120 seconds, he looked up with a triumphant smile. "We're in. What's the play, LT?" "Reroute them to these coordinates," Hawkins said, pointing to a narrow canyon on the map. We'll set up an ambush they won't see coming. The dropship touched down silently behind a ridge overlooking the canyon. Hawkins' team fanned out, taking up strategic positions among the rocks. Heavy weapons were set up, their barrels trained on the canyon entrance. Minutes ticked by. The only sound was the whisper of wind over sand. Then they heard it, the low rumble of engines. The first Vidian transport appeared at the mouth of the canyon, followed by a string of vehicles stretching back as far as the eye could see. Hawkins keyed his comms. "Deacon, you're up." The crack of Deacon's sniper rifle split the air. The lead vehicle's front tires exploded, sending it careening into the canyon wall. Chaos erupted as the convoy ground to a halt. "Now!" Hawkins shouted. Riggs and his demo team unleashed hell. Guided missiles streaked through the air, impacting with devastating precision. Artillery fire rained down, turning the canyon floor into a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel. The Vidians scrambled for cover, but they were caught in a killing zone. Human troops appeared on the ridgelines, their weapons cutting down any who tried to return fire. In the midst of the carnage, a grizzled Vidian climbed atop an overturned transport. "Cease fire," he bellowed, his voice carrying over the din of battle. "We surrender." Hawkins signaled his troops to hold their fire. "Identify yourself," he called out. "I am Commander Krax," the Vidian replied. "We lay down our arms. The fight is over." But even as Krax spoke, a group of Vidian hardliners led by a scarred officer named Grath made a break for it, sprinting towards a narrow side passage. "Garrett, take your CQC team and cut them off," Hawkins ordered. Garrett and his squad moved like lightning, intercepting the fleeing Vidians. What followed was a brutal close-quarters melee. Garrett found himself face-to-face with Grath, the Vidians' superior strength evident as they grappled. But Garrett had trained for this. He used Grath's momentum against him, executing a perfect throw that sent the Vidian crashing to the ground. Before Grath could recover, Garrett was on him, restraining the alien with mag cuffs. With the last pocket of resistance quelled, Hawkins ordered his troops to secure the prisoners. As they worked, his comms crackled to life. "Hawkins, this is Foster. Good work out there, but we've got a new problem. Get those prisoners secured and report back to base ASAP. We've got a Vidian fleet incoming, and we're going to need every asset we can get." Hawkins acknowledged the order, his mind already racing with the implications. The battle for Zephyrus, it seemed, was just getting started. Foster surveyed the tactical display, his eyes fixed on the approaching Vidian armada. The massive battle arc loomed at its center, dwarfing the surrounding vessels. "This is it," he said, turning to Admiral Jackson. "We hit them hard and fast." Jackson nodded, his weathered face set with focus. "Agreed. But how do we get past those defenses?" A gruff voice spoke up. "I might have an answer for that." Foster turned to see Commander Krax, the defected Vidian mercenary leader, approach the holotable. The alien's scarred face twisted into what passed for a grin. "The battle arc's shields have a weak point," Krax explained, manipulating the holographic display. "Here, where the power conduits intersect. Hit it with enough firepower, and you'll punch right through." Foster studied the schematics, his mind racing. "Good. Now we just need a team crazy enough to try it." Minutes later, Lieutenant Hawkins stood before a select group of human operatives and Vidian defectors. "This is a volunteer mission only," he said. "We go in hot, we hit hard, and we don't stop until we've taken down Admiral Thrax." Sergeant Deacon stepped forward without hesitation. "I'm in, sir." Corporal Riggs and Private Garrett followed suit, along with a handful of Krax's most trusted fighters. As the strike team geared up, Foster's voice crackled over the comms. "Remember, people, this isn't just about taking down Thrax. We need to keep that fleet occupied long enough for you to complete your mission." Hawkins acknowledged, checking the seals on his stealth suit. "Understood, sir. We won't let you down." The sleek boarding craft slipped away from the human fleet, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Inside, Hawkins gripped the bulkhead as they accelerated towards the battle arc. 30 seconds to contact," the pilot announced. Riggs worked feverishly at his console, fingers flying over holographic controls. Jamming their sensors. Now. The craft shuddered as it breached the Battle Ark's hull. Alarms blared, and the strike team poured out into dimly lit corridors. Move! Hawkins barked, his rifle at the ready. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Vidian security forces swarmed from adjoining passages, energy weapons flashing. Deacon dropped to one knee, his sniper rifle cracking with pinpoint precision. 2 Vidians fell before they could get off a shot. Garrett lobbed a stun grenade, the concussive blast disorienting a group of defenders. The humans surged forward, capitalizing on the confusion. One of Krax's mercenaries, a hulking alien named Grok, bellowed, "This way!" He led them down a maintenance shaft, bypassing heavily defended choke points. As they fought their way deeper into the ship, Foster's voice came through their comms. "Strike team, be advised. We're engaging the Vidian fleet now. How copy?" "Solid copy," Hawkins replied, ducking as plasma fire scorched the wall behind him. "We're making progress. ETA to command deck, 10 minutes. Outside, the void of space erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire. Human warships danced between lumbering Vidian cruisers, their superior maneuverability allowing them to strike and fade before the aliens could respond. Admiral Jackson stood on the bridge of his flagship, barking orders. "Concentrate fire on Grid 7 Alpha. Keep them off balance." Back on the Battle Ark, Hawkins and his team finally reached the sealed blast doors of the command deck. Riggs set to work, interfacing his equipment with the ship's systems. "I need 2 minutes," he said, sweat beading on his forehead. "You've got one," Hawkins replied as Vidian reinforcements rounded the corner. The corridor erupted in chaos. Deacon and Garrett laid down suppressing fire while Krax's mercenaries engaged in brutal hand-to-hand combat. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone and the screams of the wounded. "Got it!" Riggs shouted as the blast doors slid open. The strike team poured onto the command deck, catching Admiral Thrax and his Praetorian guard by surprise. Hawkins's rifle spat death, downing 2 guards before they could react. Deacon's voice rang out. "Thrax is making a break for it!" The Vidian admiral sprinted for a control panel, his fingers flying over the keys. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "He's initiated the self-destruct sequence!" Krax shouted, rushing to another console. Hawkins tackled Thrax, the 2 of them crashing to the deck in a tangle of limbs. They grappled fiercely, neither giving ground. Meanwhile, Krax worked furiously to override the self-destruct, sweat dripping from his mottled skin. Almost there. With a final desperate lunge, Hawkins pinned Thrax to the ground. The Vidian admiral snarled in defeat as Garrett slapped restraints on him. "Self-destruct aborted," Krax announced, sagging with relief. Hawkins hauled Thrax to his feet. "It's over, Admiral. Your fleet is finished." Outside, the battle reached its climax. With their flagship crippled and their leader captured, the Vidian armada began to crumble. Some ships fled, while others signaled their surrender. Admiral Jackson's voice filled the comms. "All ships, press the attack. Don't let them regroup." The human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing. Vidian ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, their hulls shattering under the relentless assault. As the last pockets of resistance were mopped up, Foster allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They had done it. They had saved Zephyrus and dealt a crippling blow to the Vidian war machine. But as he watched the aftermath of the battle unfold, Foster knew their work was not nearly finished. The Vidian threat might be neutralized for now, but ensuring lasting peace would require even greater challenges. Foster stood before the holographic display, his eyes scanning the intricate web of Vidian military assets. The victory over the Armada had been decisive, but he knew the war was not nearly finished. He turned to face the unlikely assembly before him, human officers and Vidian defectors united by a common purpose. "We've dealt them a crippling blow," Foster said, his voice steady. "But our work isn't finished. Intelligence from Admiral Thrax and Commander Krax has revealed a hidden threat." He gestured to a blinking red dot on the holomap. "Kaldor Prime, A secret research facility developing weapons that could undo everything we fought for. Lieutenant Hawkins stepped forward, his face etched with focus. What are we looking at, sir? Foster's fingers danced across the controls, zooming in on a heavily fortified complex. A fortress disguised as a moon. Our new allies tell us it's crawling with Vidian security forces and scientists working on experimental tech. We can't let it stand. He outlined the plan, a joint strike force of humans and mercenary defectors, using stealth shuttles to slip past the facility's defenses. As Foster spoke, the assembled team studied schematics and readouts, committing every detail to memory. Hours later, under the cover of Kaldor Prime's perpetual night, 3 shuttles ghosted through the facility's sensor net. Inside the lead craft, Hawkins checked his gear one last time. Beside him, Krax's scarred face was a mask of concentration. 2 minutes to touchdown, the pilot's voice crackled over the comms. The shuttles touched down silently on the facility's outer perimeter. Hawkins's team moved swiftly, using breaching charges to blow a hole in the complex's outer wall. They poured through the gap, weapons at the ready. Alarms blared. Vidian security forces swarmed from adjoining corridors, energy weapons flashing in the dim light. Corporal Riggs and his demo team responded instantly, laying down a withering barrage of suppressive fire. Push forward, Hawkins shouted, leading a group of human operatives and Krax's mercenaries deeper into the facility. They fought their way through a maze of corridors, encountering increasingly fierce resistance. In a vast laboratory, they came face to face with the fruits of Vidian research, cages filled with snarling, bioengineered monstrosities that lunged at the barriers separating them from their creators. What in hell? Hawkins breathed, his rifle trained on a creature that seemed to be more teeth than flesh. A Vidian scientist fumbled with the controls of an experimental energy projector, swinging the massive device towards the human mercenary force. Sergeant Deacon's sniper rifle cracked, and the scientist crumpled, his finger inches from the firing stud. In another wing of the facility, Private Garrett led his CQC squad against Malak's elite Praetorian Guard. The narrow confines erupted in a brutal melee of flashing blades and armored fists. Garrett ducked under a Vidian's wild swing, driving his combat knife up and under the alien's guard. Nearby, one of Krax's mercenaries grappled with a towering Praetorian, using leverage and skill to overcome the Vidian's superior strength. As the human mercenary force secured the main labs, Foster received an urgent transmission from Hawkins. Sir, we've found something. You need to see this. Foster's blood ran cold as he studied the schematics of Malak's doomsday device, a weapon capable of rendering entire worlds uninhabitable through an engineered pathogen. The implications were staggering. Hawkins, secure that device at all costs, Foster ordered. I'm going after Malak. Foster led a team of operators through the facility's winding corridors, guided by Krax's insider knowledge. They fought their way to the central control room, where they found Malak surrounded by banks of humming equipment. The Vidian scientist commander's eyes blazed with fanatical intensity. One more step, he snarled, and I trigger the failsafe. This entire system will burn. Foster's mind raced, searching for a solution. He keyed his comms. Krax, we need those security protocols overridden. Now. Seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. Then Krax's gravelly voice came through. Done. You're clear. Before Malak could react, Riggs burst into the room, his hands flying over a portable terminal. Failsafe disarmed, sir. The fight drained from Malak's face as he realized his trump card was gone. He sagged, defeated, as Foster's team moved in to secure him. With the immediate threat neutralized, Foster surveyed the captured facility. The stockpile of experimental weapons would need to be carefully cataloged and contained. But even as he issued orders to secure the complex, new reports came in of Vidian loyalists rallying in other sectors. Foster's eyes sharp as he considered the challenges ahead. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. But with their growing alliance of humans and reformed mercenaries, he knew they stood a fighting chance of bringing lasting peace to this battle-scarred region of space. The harsh, rocky terrain of Corvin 4 stretched out before Lieutenant Hawkins as he peered through the viewport of the orbital insertion craft. His strike team, primed for action, checked their gear one last time. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot's voice crackled over the comms. Hawkins turned to his team. Remember, we hit hard and fast. Cracks, you're our eyes on the ground. Let's show these mercs what happens when they mess with humanity. The craft's bay doors opened, revealing the mining facility below. Hawkins leapt out first, the rest of the team following close behind. They plummeted through the thin atmosphere, their descent suits glowing from the friction. As they neared the ground, retro thrusters fired, slowing their fall. They landed with practiced precision, weapons already drawn. The air erupted with plasma fire. Vidian mercenaries poured from fortified positions, their weapons blazing. "Contact front!" Hawkins shouted, diving behind a jagged rock formation. "Deacon, find me a sniper perch and start thinning them out!" Sergeant Deacon sprinted to higher ground, his rifle already at his shoulder. The crack of precise shots rang out, and Vidian mercenaries began to fall. Corporal Riggs slid in next to Hawkins, pulling a demolition charge from his pack. "Sir, I can breach that bunker to our left. It'll give us a clear shot at their command post." "Do it!" Hawkins ordered, laying down suppressive fire. Riggs darted forward, plasma bolts sizzling past him. He slapped the charge onto the bunker's reinforced door and sprinted back. The explosion rocked the battlefield, leaving a gaping hole in the Vidian defenses. Private Garrett led the charge through the breach, his close-quarters combat team right behind him. They swept through the bunker, neutralizing the stunned defenders with practiced efficiency. Crax's voice crackled over the comms. "Hawkins, there's a service tunnel 50 meters to your right. It'll take us straight to Mazrak's command center." The team regrouped and pushed forward, using Crax's insider knowledge to outmaneuver the mercenary forces. They fought their way through narrow corridors and vast mining chambers, slowly gaining ground. Suddenly, Foster's urgent transmission came through. "Hawkins, we've got a problem. A Vidian fleet is en route to reinforce Mazrak. You need to capture him now, or this whole operation is blown." Hawkins cursed under his breath. "Copy that, sir. We're pushing to the command bunker now." They reached a heavily fortified blast door, the last obstacle between them and Mazrak. Riggs set to work on the locking mechanism, while the rest of the team held off waves of mercenary reinforcements. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing Mazrak's elite Praetorian Guard. Garrett led the charge, his combat knife flashing as he engaged the first guard in close-quarters combat. The narrow confines of the bunker erupted into a brutal melee. Hawkins fought his way through the chaos, his eyes locked on Mazrak. The Vidian warlord stood at the far end of the room, a snarl on his face as he raised an energy weapon. Garrett intercepted him, tackling Mazrak to the ground. They grappled fiercely, neither willing to give an inch. Garrett's human strength and training gave him the edge, and he finally pinned Mazrak, securing restraints around the warlord's wrists. "Command bunker secure," Hawkins reported, breathing heavily. "Mazrak is in custody." Foster's voice came through, tight with tension. "Good work. Now get topside. We've got a fleet to deal with." The team emerged from the bunker to see the sky filled with Vidian ships. Foster's voice guided them to a nearby canyon, where they watched as the mercenary fleet approached. Suddenly, the sky lit up with weapons fire. Admiral Jackson's cruisers, hidden behind the canyon walls, unleashed a devastating barrage. Vidian ships exploded in brilliant flashes, their hulls shattering under the assault. As the dust settled, a lone figure emerged from the wreckage. Suresh, Mazrak's cybernetically enhanced second-in-command. He rallied the remaining mercenaries, urging them to make a final stand. Hawkins raised his rifle, ready for another fight. But as the human forces closed in, displaying their superior firepower and tactics, the fight drained from the mercenaries' faces. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Suresh, his cybernetic enhancements sparking from battle damage, finally raised his hands in surrender. "Enough," he said, his voice filled with defeat. "We yield." Hawkins approached cautiously, securing Suresh's restraints himself. "Smart move," he said. "There's been enough bloodshed today." As the last of the mercenaries were rounded up, Hawkins surveyed the captured mining facility. They had won a significant victory, but he knew the fight for stability in this region was just getting started. Foster's voice came through one last time. "Well done, everyone. Let's secure this rock and figure out our next move. The real work is just beginning." The dust had barely settled on Corvin 4 when Foster received the urgent intel. His eyes widened as he scanned the report, detailing a massive Vidian weapons cache hidden on Caldera, a remote mining moon. "Hawkins cracks my office now," Foster barked into his comms. Minutes later, the two stood before him as he pulled up a holographic display of Caldera. The moon's craggy surface rotated slowly, a blinking red dot indicating their target. "This depot houses enough firepower to reignite the war," Foster said, his voice tight. "Plasma cannons, antimatter warheads, and worse. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands." Hawkins leaned in, studying the facility's layout. "Heavy fortifications. Getting in won't be easy." Cracks nodded, his scarred face grim. "But not impossible. I know Vidian security protocols. We can bypass the outer defenses if we're careful." Foster locked eyes with both of them. "Assemble your best. We move in 6 hours." The strike team's stealth shuttle cut through Caldera's thin atmosphere, its adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with the rocky terrain. Inside, Hawkins checked his gear one last time as Cracks briefed the team on the facility's layout. They touched down silently in a narrow ravine, the shuttle's engines barely a whisper. Hawkins led the way, his team moving in perfect sync as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Jagged rocks and steep cliffs surrounded them, offering both cover and danger. At the facility's outer perimeter, Cracks input a series of codes into a concealed panel. The energy barrier flickered momentarily, allowing the team to slip through undetected. Inside, the stark corridors echoed with the hum of machinery. They moved swiftly, using hand signals to communicate. As they rounded a corner, a patrol of Vidian guards appeared. "Contact!" Hawkins hissed, raising his weapon. The corridor erupted in a hail of plasma fire. Hawkins' team reacted instantly, taking cover behind support pillars and returning fire with precision. The Vidians fell quickly, but the noise had attracted attention. Alarms blared as more guards poured in from adjoining sections. Riggs sprinted forward, slapping breaching charges on a sealed blast door. "Fire in the hole!" The explosion rocked the facility, creating a path deeper into the complex. As they pushed forward, Deacon broke off, finding a perch in the facility's exposed infrastructure. His sniper rifle cracked repeatedly, each shot eliminating a key target and sowing chaos among the defenders. They fought their way through winding corridors and vast storage bays, the resistance growing fiercer with each step. In a massive chamber filled with experimental weaponry, they encountered Overseer Volcron, his eyes blazing with fanatical intensity. "You will not deny us our destiny," Volcron screamed, activating a prototype plasma cannon. The weapon's charge filled the air with crackling energy. Hawkins and his team dove for cover as Volcron unleashed a devastating blast, melting through layers of reinforced metal. "Riggs, we need that thing offline," Hawkins shouted over the comms. The demo expert nodded, pulling a specialized EMP grenade from his pack. He waited for a lull in Volcron's fire, then hurled the device with pinpoint accuracy. The grenade detonated in a burst of blue-white light. Volcron's weapon sputtered and died, leaving the Overseer exposed. Before he could react, Cracks was on him, subduing the Vidian with a series of swift, brutal strikes. As they secured Volcron, Foster's urgent transmission came through. "Hawkins, we've got incoming. Suresh is leading a mercenary fleet straight for you. Secure that weapons cache at all costs." Hawkins cursed under his breath. "Copy that. We'll hold the line here." He turned to his team, their faces streaked with sweat and grime. "Dig in, people. We've got company coming." As Hawkins fortified their position, Foster led his forces to the narrow canyons surrounding the facility. Human warships lay in wait, their weapons primed. The first Vidian ships appeared on the horizon, completely unaware of the trap they were flying into. "All ships, weapons free," Foster ordered. The canyons lit up with weapons fire, catching the mercenary fleet in a devastating crossfire. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes, their hulls shattering under the relentless barrage. On the mercenary vessels that survived the initial assault, chaos reigned. Entire crews refused to fight, some even turning on their own captains. Foster watched as ship after ship powered down, signaling their surrender. Siresh's flagship, a massive dreadnought, took multiple direct hits. Its engines sputtered and died, leaving the vessel drifting helplessly. Foster saw his opportunity. "Garrett, you're up. Board that ship and bring me Siresh." Garrett's team launched from their assault craft, using maneuvering thrusters to guide them to the stricken dreadnought. They breached the hull, immediately engaging Siresh's loyalist guard in vicious close-quarters combat. The narrow corridors of the flagship became a brutal melee. Garrett ducked under a Vidian's wild swing, driving his combat knife deep into the alien's torso. Nearby, one of his team grappled with a hulking mercenary, using leverage to slam the Vidian into a bulkhead. They fought their way to the bridge, where Siresh made his last stand. The cybernetically enhanced warlord was a whirlwind of destruction, his augmented limbs allowing him to fight with inhuman speed and strength. Garrett and his team surrounded Siresh, coordinating their attacks to wear him down. A well-placed shot from one of Garrett's men damaged Siresh's cybernetic leg, throwing him off balance. Garrett seized the opening, tackling the warlord to the ground and securing restraints around his wrists. "Siresh is secure," Garrett reported, breathing heavily. With the mercenary threat neutralized, Foster regrouped with Hawkins and Cracks at the Caldera Depot. The facility bore the scars of intense fighting, but the joint human mercenary force stood victorious. Foster surveyed the captured weapons cache, his eyes narrowing at the sheer destructive potential contained within. He turned to Hawkins and Cracks, their faces showing a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "Well done, all of you," Foster said. "We've dealt the Vidian military-industrial complex a blow they won't soon recover from." As the teams began the monumental task of securing and cataloging the captured weapons, Foster stepped outside the facility. He looked out over Caldera's rugged landscape, the aftermath of the battle still visible in the distance. A new chapter was beginning in this war-torn region of space, one where humans and their newfound allies would work together to. The acrid stench of sulfur filled the air as Foster surveyed the bleak landscape of Akrotiri. Columns of steam rose from fissures in the blackened earth, obscuring visibility and adding to the oppressive atmosphere. He turned to Cracks, who stood beside him, eyes scanning the horizon. "This is it," Foster said, his voice barely audible over the rumble of nearby geothermal vents. "Vortac's last stand." Cracks nodded, his scarred face set in grim lines. "We end this today." Dropships screamed overhead, disgorging waves of human and mercenary troops onto the volcanic plains. The ground shook as Admiral Jackson's warships unleashed a barrage of orbital fire, pummeling Vidian defensive positions. Hawkins led his squad through the chaos, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads. They pushed forward, using the jagged terrain for cover. A Vidian shock trooper burst from a hidden bunker, energy blade humming. Hawkins ducked under the wild swing, driving his combat knife up and under the alien's armor. The Vidian collapsed with a gurgle. "Contact left!" Riggs shouted, unleashing a burst of fire at an approaching exosuit. The massive war machine shrugged off the shots, its arm-mounted cannon powering up. Deacon's sniper rifle cracked, the high-caliber round punching through the exosuit's optics. The machine stumbled, giving Riggs time to slap a breaching charge onto its leg joint. The resulting explosion toppled the exosuit, crushing several Vidian infantry beneath its bulk. They fought their way to a massive blast door, the entrance to Vortac's subterranean complex. Cracks input an override code, his fingers flying over the alien keypad. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a nightmare. Vast chambers stretched before them, filled with bubbling vats of sickly green liquid. Misshapen creatures writhed in containment tubes, products of Vortac's twisted experiments. The stench of chemicals and decay assaulted their senses. "By the stars," Hawkins breathed, horror etched on his face. A klaxon blared, and Vidian scientists scrambled to secure their work. Praetorian guards poured into the chamber, their ornate armor gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. "Take them down," Foster ordered, opening fire. The air filled with plasma bolts and shattered glass as the two forces clashed. Rigs lobbed grenades into clusters of vats, the explosions releasing caustic chemicals that ate through Vidian armor. Deacon's precise shots dropped scientists before they could release their monstrous creations. Garrett's close-quarters team pushed ahead, fighting their way towards the central command bunker. They moved with practiced efficiency, covering each other as they cleared room after room. They burst onto the command deck to find Grand Admiral Vortak hunched over a control panel, his eyes wild with fanaticism. "You're too late!" he snarled, slamming his hand down on a flashing red button. Warning lights bathed the room in an eerie glow as Vortak's doomsday weapon began its activation sequence. Foster shouldered his way to the front, leveling his weapon at the Vidian leader. "Shut it down, Vortak!" Foster demanded. Vortak sneered, revealing sharpened teeth. "Watch as your pitiful species is wiped from existence." Krax pushed past Foster, his hands flying over the alien controls. "I can stop it," he growled, sweat beading on his brow as he worked to override the system. Vortak lunged for another console, but Foster was faster. A burst of gunfire caught the Vidian in the chest, dropping him to the deck in a spray of alien blood. "Now, Krax!" Foster shouted as warning sirens reached a fever pitch. With a final keystroke, Krax deactivated the weapon. The sirens fell silent, leaving only the ragged breathing of the strike team. Foster looked down at Vortak's corpse, a mix of relief and weariness washing over him. "It's over," he said softly. Hours later, Foster and Krax stood on Akrotiri's surface, watching as human and Vidian alike prepared funeral pyres for the fallen. The sky above was choked with ash and smoke, a fitting backdrop for the somber occasion. "We've lost so many," Krax said, his voice heavy with emotion. Foster nodded, placing a hand on the former mercenary's shoulder. "Their sacrifice won't be forgotten. We have a chance now, a chance for real peace." As the pyres were lit, casting a warm glow across the desolate landscape, Foster and Krax shared a look of understanding. The road ahead would be difficult, but they would face it together.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.